Hey there folks, Kozzi here for Pick One Pack One, running through our series on Jekk's Bounty on a Budget. We are now up to the Lair of the Beast, almost halfway through the whole campaign, and this is a fun particular little matchup. The central idea is that your units go to the enemy void when killed. And for me as a deck builder, what that screams out is that I don't want to have a lot of units in my deck, or if I do, they have to be absolutely essential and I want to be able to deal with it if they happen to take control. Or they should be really resilient and difficult for my opponent to kill. So with that in mind, let's take a look first of all at the Feln Control deck that I have adapted from the one that you saw in the previous video. I like this idea of having a bit of longevity running through, seeing some similarities, seeing the tweaks. So it's the same shell built around the Tundra Explorer with a series of great spells. The great spells, some of them are similar. We still have Permafrost, we still have Annihilate. In fact, we've upped the numbers of Annihilate and reduced the numbers of Suffocate just because of the nature of the cards that my opponents have. Still have our fun of the Backlash, Eilyn's Favor, static bolts to deal with some weapons and things like that, Vara's Favor, and then we have some slightly different pieces of removal here. We have both Polymorph and Feeding Time as our premium pieces of removal, along with Deathstrike. Why do we suddenly introduce Feeding Time and Polymorph? Well, that's because it changes the creature before it dies. And that's because there are quite a few creatures in my opponent's deck that do nasty things when they hit the void. So I want to nullify that as much as possible. And so Polymorph and Feeding Time have become my primary pieces of removal. As far as the rares, we've shifted around a little bit. I want to try and mess up their void as much as possible, and so I've chosen to use some of my rare allotment to introducing Stewards of the Past. Again, very useful card in general. I have no issues recommending this card if you play a Feln Scar deck or a Feln Control deck. You are quite likely to be running this card. It's basically one of the better void hoses in the game, alongside Statuary Maiden. And so that's precisely what I want to be doing. I want to be hosing my opponent's void. I want to be nullifying the units that go in there, including my own, I guess. So that's where Steward of the Past gets the nod. I'm spending one of my rares on a Staff of Stories so that I can just get a little bit of extra card draw. And then finally we have a handful of Second Sights. Just again, for a little bit more card draw, might come into play and help out with the static bolts perhaps. To be honest, this is a little bit of a legacy from the actual Feln Control deck that I was playing before. And then finally we've added in some Sabotage. My opponent has some pretty nasty spells and pretty nasty attachments, and so this is a card that's seeing a lot of love in Constructed, particularly when the meta's right and you realize that a lot of people are stocking up on weapons or powerful spells. And so I've decided to run 3 in this list. The 3 basically means I want to see one in any given matchup, but I don't want too many in my hand, and that's because I'm fearful that my opponent might only have one spell that I really care about, and so I'd rather have something a little bit more proactive. And again, just a couple of monuments to smooth things out. I'm not quite as worried about my life total being pressured, so we've gotten rid of the life gain monuments, instead just stayed with the Cobalts. And then for something completely different, this one isn't quite as rock solid. I need a little bit of fortune to run with me, but this is going back to our Hooru Aegis deck. The idea of having a whole bunch of creatures that have Aegis so that removal is less effective on them. So we have units such as our Crownwatch Pallies, our Borderlands Waykeepers, our Silverwing Familiars, and our Thunderbirds, making up these core unit or core block of units that need 2 pieces of removal used against them before they can go into my opponent's yard and give them value. We have some similar pieces of removal, the Permafrosts, the Polymorphs, they're all important. Static Bolts again, because I like the versatility and the one-off of the Backlash. And then we've made some small changes. We have some Inspires. Originally in a standard Hooru list, we have the Tinkerer that gives a unit in your hand +1/+1, and that's the last thing on earth that I want to give my opponent the choice of if they happen to get into their void. So Inspire is the functional reprint for me. Finest Hours Stay, and then we have some other types of removal like Lightning Strikes, the core engine of the Pally's Oath book. And then the other big change here is Rain of Frogs. It's my rare allotment. I gotta admit, this is me just having a little bit of fun and being a little bit curious. The whole idea is that this one can choose a non-power card from the enemy's hand, and then I transform each copy in their hand to their deck and their void. And so it's just another piece of void hate outside of Shadow. Now, I have seen a couple of decks run these. It's not the most common card at all. I'd be totally lying to you if I tried to make it out to be. I've seen some people run it in a Feln Control deck, and that's about it. So if you don't already have this, don't worry about it. That being said, if you draft at all, you're likely to pick these up because they go around 7, 8, and 9. They're not amazing in Limited, and you might have a couple of these. Again, if you don't have the specific card, that's cool. Or indeed, even if you have cards that are better, feel free to put them in. This is just me taking an idea of wanting to interact with their void because that's what I know my opponent's trying to do. And of course, the remainder of the rares are taken up in our Valkyrie Enforcers and our Hammer of Might. Actually, we've got a couple more here. I got the Pali's Oath book there as well. So we might be just a little bit over my limit, which I didn't quite realize at the time, but hopefully as we go on, you guys have earned some credits and you can forgive me for that small oversight. Either way, we got some sweet matches coming up in just one moment. As we begin to descend into the lair of the beast. We'll start off with Feln Control. I'm relatively confident with Feln in any of these given matchups. I feel as though it lines up quite well, even in a budget format. This has me a little bit nervous. We're going to be praying to see our Shadow very soon, otherwise we could be in a little bit of strife. It may incentivize me to use my second strike really early, even though I might not get a lot of value out of it. Okay, sweet. That's now being rendered a moot point. Decision point here is between dropping our Borderlands Waykeeper early or playing Sabotage and seeing what's in their hand. I'd rather use my power efficiently right now. They're unlikely to have two pieces of removal to deal with this straight off the bat, so I'm sure that she'll be here next turn, and then we can start to tease apart their hand and see what it is I want to engage with. We'll do that before I attack so I can see if the coast is clear. So they have Grasping at Shadows to play a unit from the void, a pair of Dark Feasts, and then a Suffocate that's not super useful against me at the moment because I don't happen to have any creatures that can be killed by it. That's 2, 4, 5, 2, 4, 5, so 2 non-spell cards. I don't really care about them gaining life, so they can have the Dark Feast. I don't really care about them playing a unit from the void at the moment because there's nothing that scares me too much. I think what I might do is preemptively protect my unit. I do want to be playing a handful of units that have power 3 or less, or perhaps I just want to get rid of the Dark Return and I can just play around the Suffocate. No, part of my draw engine is actually based on that, so we'll get rid of that for now. And we'll swing in. It's the hidden upside on this card is also the fact that you get to see what's in your opponent's hand. Okay, so we've drawn the Tundra Explorer, which makes me happy. What I put on top is actually a moot point right now. I was hoping to dig into my 4th power. But that's okay. That's an excellent draw for us. I don't want to commit too much to the board. This is a control deck, so it's not as though I need to be ultra committing to race. So instead, I think I'll hold up my Annihilate in case they play a creature that I don't like. I'm glad to see that they've wasted the Dark Return on a creature that doesn't have a huge amount of impact on the game. And so now we have a lot of premium removal. I need to work out if I want to use some of my removal here. I know that they have the 2 life gain spells, they have the player card from the void spell, and 2 unknown cards. So I think I feel as though I've got a lot covered. I'm just beginning to notice that my computer's lagging, so apologies if this is worse for you from your experience than it is for me. It's already pretty bad as is. I'll definitely finish up after this series of videos. We're in an absolutely dominant position here. I'm going to take the opportunity to see what's on top, see if there are any cards that I want to use before I go in and attack. And one of the nice things about Static Bolt is its utility. It can also be used to hurry up the game here if they're able to deal with one of my units. But they are not. So we can waltz into a very comfortable victory against our Shadowlands opponent. If you've never had the opportunity to second sight Static Bolt on top of your library, I can highly recommend it. It makes life very easy indeed. So that was the Feln Control. Controlling exactly how it was meant to. This is the one that's going to be a little bit trickier, I think. So what I want to be doing is stacking up on one particular unit, getting a lot of value on it. This isn't the hand that will do it for me, unfortunately. This one's not bad by virtue of the fact that I have a Crown Watch Pally. Although I will like to be seeing an extra piece of power sometime soon. Alrighty, so here's the pop quiz. What should I do first? Should I play the Crown Watch Pally or the Pally Oath Book? I've got the waiting music going on in my head, but I'm not remotely bold enough to sing it out loud, especially on video. And for those of you playing at home, the answer is to play the Crown Watch Pally first. The reason why is because if I play the Pally Oath Book on that turn and then my Crown Watch Paladin, I don't get to attack with him because it's just been cast that turn, so it's still slow. Whereas this way, even if I don't draw power, although that is nice, and so I could choose to play something else right here, but I don't think I will. It means I get to attack straight away and get the benefit from the Paladin's Oath Book. They're little sequencing things, but they do make a big difference. And now we'll just try and win with this evasive threat. So, into the graveyard has gone an Oblivion Spike, a Dark Feast, a Dark Return, and some Sigils. I'm happy to see one less Oblivion Spike. That's the card that I'm most nervous about. I think what we'll do here is nothing. It could be tempting just to play one of these creatures straight away, but that opens it up to them being able to attack me with something. Instead, if I hold up Backlash and Finest Hour, I can actually protect my unit and also protect myself from a spell. The reality is, unless they can answer this Thunderbird, I've got this game in the bag. So next turn I'll hit for 5, getting them down to 13, then 6 getting them down to 7, and then 7 getting them down to 0 without even having to use these particular spells. So all I need to do is make sure that this doesn't die. And the way that it's most likely to die is by me powering down, using all of my power, and getting myself into trouble. And I really don't mind if they do 1 damage to me with their Spore Folk. That's perfectly fine by me. So if I hadn't have done that, what would have happened instead? They probably would have gotten back either the Scorpion Wasp or the Crown Watch. I would have gotten back the Scorpion Wasp, and then I wouldn't be able to attack anymore. Granted, I have a Static Bolt in my hand. They didn't know that. But I'll still be putting myself in some serious trouble. So, if I Finest Hour now whilst they're tapped or powered down, I do 8 damage putting them on 8. Next turn I can attack for 6 with the Static Bolt to kill them. I think that's worth it. I'd rather do it this turn whilst they have no power, because that way I feel safest that I'm going to survive this particular turn. Okay, so they've gained a little bit more life. That's changed the maths that I was doing. And they've worryingly left up exactly the right amount of power to play a Scorpion Wasp. What I could do is I could attack with my Crown Watch Pally. They're unlikely to block here unless it's a chump block, and it gives me a chance to see whether there's a stop for this actual Wasp to rock up. Because this is the card that's going to win the game for me. I didn't see a stop there, which is going to embolden me to attack next turn. So whilst, yes, I could have had them dead on this turn, I feel as though I've saved myself a more nasty situation. And I was still able to get the win regardless. That was sweet. I quite enjoyed that match. Some interesting decision points and sequencing options, which I'm happy to see. Like, this video series is designed primarily as a beginner series. The budget, yes, okay, you get experienced players who play on a budget as well, but a lot of the people who are going to care about this most are those who are just starting out, just getting into the campaign. And so, yeah, hopefully this video has provided a couple more tips beyond a deck list. And if that's the case, then I'm really happy, because that's precisely what I want my videos to be able to do for you guys. Sweet. Well, we are past the halfway mark. Next time we're going to be looking at the Collector's Horde and moving on through the ever more challenging missions. And I'll see whether I can stay to my limit of 8 rares rather per deck. I know that I broke it by accident with that Hooru Aegis deck, but we'll see how we can go and what I can build, especially with making 2 decks on a budget each time. There are a little bits of stretches there, but we'll see how we go. Cool, folks. I've been Kozzi for Pick One Pack One. Thanks as always for spending some of your time with me, and I look forward to seeing you guys in the future.